Okay, so here we go to the left angle cross of cycles with the 5-1 and the 5-2. Yeah, everything is a cycle, guys. Cycles, cycles, cycles. Cycles are never ending, and it's very important for people that have these cycles that they finish the cycles, whatever they start. So we go to the 5-1. When you get to the left angle cross, you have the left angle cross of cycles. It's cycles. And of course, it's getting its name from the 50 through 53 at the other end. And we have this double definition that is here. Not only do we have the 3254, but we have the 53 and the 42. The fifth line is magnanimity. Magnanimity. Largest. These beings can transform entire communities' lives, but their own is a real problem. My favorite is Richard Nixon, the most scandaled former president of the United States. This was his double definition on this cross. You can see that this enormous power to take people through a very ambitious cycle, huge ambitious cycle, but his own process and how messy it was. And then you get to see this that the 54th connive. They go in and rob psychiatrists' offices and they bug the opposition to find out how to beat them in the election. This is all 54 shit. So one of the things about these beings on the left angle cross of cycles that they give you a cycle. They start you on a path of transformation. They're format beings. They're very, very powerful beings. And they're the ones that will set you on this track. So the interesting thing about the marrying maiden is that when you're dealing with the penetration, this is the real I'm looking to rise up. And when you get to the left angle is saying, I am going to help you rise up. Now, it doesn't say what they want in return, it's just very different. This is not in any way my ambition. It's about I'm only ambitious. Sorry, scrolled up so that I can raise you all up. I don't really want to be president, but I know that I can help you. And if I'm your president, then your lives will be better. So I'm willing to sacrifice myself with great magnanimity and be available to you to help you rise up. And by the way, I'm going to steal and cheat. I'm going to enrich myself at your expense, nonetheless. The natural authority and actualization spirit that in positions of power can have genuine and fruitful relationships with the less advantaged as long as they are in service and make no demands. Isn't that great? You have to have a black sense of humor to appreciate it. I'm a five. I think that's hilarious. There's no detriment. The energy for actualizing that despite this power fuels fruitful relationships with others. So this is the underlying power of the true heretic. The true heretic says, I have the energy to change your life, whether you like it or not. We tend to assume at this point that people want to abandon their not self. They don't. They have no idea what it means. They have no idea what could possibly replace it. And that's something that's quite frightening. One of the things about tribal ambition is that tribal ambition is driven by these kind of forces, these left angle crosses of cycles, this enormous power to get the other going tribally. And it's not like they're doing it for nothing. They don't do it for nothing. And they have very simple rules. I will help you rise up, do what I say. Now, this is the classic of how tribal materialism began in the 12th or 13th century, when we have the beginnings of what could would become guilds, craftsmen, and you would have a guild master. Let's say that they made furniture, and the guild master would take in local children. Now, those local children are empowered by this master. The master will take these children through a cycle of transformation that will turn them into craftspeople. They will have to do everything the master demands, including cooking and cleaning and working 12 hours a day, on and on and on and on and on. But at the end, when they are able to present their masterpiece, when they're finally free of the hand of the master, there's a great joy in these beings that they rose up and they forget that the master was cruel or nasty or hard. This is the quality. This is the beginning of this process. And you can see that the tribe has to take responsibility for training its own. And it's here in this fifth line, obviously, the 5-1 is very powerful in this configuration. If they have enough basic understanding at the first line level, then giving this definition where you immediately can bring people into transforming cycle, where you could immediately condition them to see themselves as being able to transform, you get a lot of things. This is great for recruiting soldiers. It's a great for recruiting priests. It's great for recruiting recruiters, you name it. Fruitful relationships with the less advantage. This is a wonderful line. Natural authority and actualizing spirit. No, a beautiful line, great. So yeah, what's the cycle is going on, and we are you recruiting, and it's really takes 7 years to be a master. I think with human design we can save so much education, and it really needs to be done right to the spot. There's no other way to go around it. Anyway, let's go to the 5-2. It's probably one of the few places where 5-2 can be fairly easily motivated, because this is the kind of configuration where you're pushing people away from you rather than pulling them to you, in the sense that you want them to stand on their own 2 feet. You want them to get things going. You want them to go through a specific process. You want to initiate them into a cycle. Remember that when you're talking about the abstract form and you're talking about the experiential cycle, it's about life, it's about living it, it's about living through the transformation. It's about growth and transformation. The 5-2 has a potential to be called, and as I mentioned, if you have a second line with the 54, automatically you're going to get more calls than if you have a second line someplace else. It's a place to get called. The only thing that comes close to it is the 19-2, and that's not quite as powerful. But the 54th with a 2 is something where you know there's going to be a powerful call. That call can be strong enough for the 5 to define its motivation. So it's possible here that the 5-2 can be physically involved, directly involved if they're properly motivated again. It's out of this position that the 5 love to be on the second floor. The most difficult thing for me to deal with in my life was getting off my high hat. This 5 position of looking down at the world and saying, they're all lesser beings, is natural to the not self 5. So for the 5-2, this magnanimity to the less advantaged is kind of fulfillment of its own imagined ego trip. I'm better than them. I was always suspicious of the fact that they're useless, and I'm not. And by empowering them and giving them something worthy to do, not only am I going to get a reward for that, because there's a reward for that. This is the 54 gate. It's material. You're going to get your reward. But one of the byproducts of that reward is that you will leave me alone, because I can really give that to something to do out there. The secret for 5-2s is to never allow anyone to know you for too long as a personal level. We know that the twos don't like people coming into this space and mucking around, particularly the 2-4s. But it's one of the things with the 2 with the 5 is that the 5 has the greatest impact on strangers. Familiarity breeds contempt. This is the great rule. And it's very, very important for them to see that as somebody that is capable of reaching out to the stranger, empowering the stranger, that really is their role. One of the most interesting thing about the 5, it is not just on this cross, but in the Mary Maiden, is that in its bridge outwards into the collective world, it's like a tribal business that grows big enough to become a world business. And there are many you can track now over the 40, 50 years that went from being little village operation. I think of the big bankruptcy that just happened, Parmalat, from northern Italy. There was this small village dairy farm 57 years ago. It turned into a multi-billion-dollar worldwide organization. This is a 55 for realm. In other words, the ability to be able to bring to the tribe the capacity to be able to actualize at a much higher level, at a much broader level than just within the tribal concept. And one of the things that made in many cases tribal peace possible, because the fifth and the sixth line represent trade. In other words, to be able to trade with the other tribes over there. And when you're trading with the other tribes, if you become dependent on the goods that you both receive from each other, it's hard to go to war. It's one of the most difficult things. You see this in our modern globalization. It would be very, very tricky. Everything is so interconnected. The cost of conflict now is enormous because of the ripple effect that it has in its integrated world of globalized economy. As I've been mentioning in relationships to 2-5s and 5-2, is this transition that is taking place in our technologies. It makes a lot easier for hermits to be able to have their externalized and universalized field available to them without the consequences to being an outsourced employee who gets promoted to some higher position. A virtual environment doesn't bring the same consequences as being promoted of the factory floor to being a foreman. It just doesn't so. So one of the things in terms of the financial stability and the financial well-being is that the 2-5s and the 5-2s are going to do much better in this area than they did in the last, as an example. So yeah, it's really the 5-2s are really in power right now. They're the one in charge. It's soon going to be the 6-2s, but the 5-2s are really doing good right now. So if you're 5-2, you're in a good position.